Millions of pounds to remove unsafe cladding from high-rise buildings in England.
Here's what was announced yesterday. The government promised £3.5 billion in addition to the £1.6 billion of funding announced last year. That's to remove cladding from tower blocks taller than 18 metres.
Now, for buildings below that height, there will be a loan scheme where payments for leaseholders will be capped at £50 a month. To make sure the whole industry, the building industry, contributes, there will also be a new levy on developers of future high-rises to cover the cost of those grants.
So what do people who are living in these buildings actually think now they know? Breakfast Tim Muffet has been finding out.
I cry for nothing sometimes because I'm so desperate for something to happen, to save us.
Adeline is 76. The anxiety caused by the cladding surrounding her flat is proving hard to bear.
It's really affecting me, mentally, my health. Now my savings are gone. I don't know what to do. I can't find work.
Woolwich in South London, the Royal Artillery Quays development, where costs are rising and expectations are lowering.
How tough has this been for you?
It's been very tough. I have nightmares sometimes. Because sometimes in the middle of the night, the alarm goes off. I just wonder where's the fire.
My service charge has gone up by about £200 last year alone. That's £200 a month. So right now I'm stuck in a property which I can't sell. No matter how hard I try and how much I try to, I knock off the asking price. No one wants to buy it, no one wants to invest in property. That's a fire risk.
The government has pledged a further £3.5 billion to help with cladding removal and repairs, on top of £1.6 billion already promised.
What did you make of the government's announcement?
I mean, it's a step in the right direction, definitely, and it's some relief for leaseholders like myself who are in buildings above 18 metres. But, there are other cladding or non-cladding related issues that could cost just as much as, the extraordinary amounts that we were expecting to pay for cladding that hasn't been addressed. There's, again, the insurance premium costs, and I just think that more needs to be done.
The management company here, Rendell and Rittner, says it understands how worrying and stressful this is for residents. It says it's making every effort to mitigate increases in service charges. Housing developer Barrett says the flats met all building regulations when they were built in 2003. It says it's working hard to find a solution. Joe lives in a flat less than 18 metres high. The government says he would be able to access loans to replace unsafe cladding. Repayments, it says, won't ever exceed £50 a month.
I feel betrayed, to be honest with you. I think, if we have to have the same certification as buildings above 18 metres and we still are required to have the EWS1 form, then why are we hit by the same fire safety risks, costs that the buildings higher than us are having to take on? It's an arbitrary height that they just clung on to. And I think if all of these buildings need to be made safe, then the height of the building shouldn't be an issue.
But it's still unclear how the loan scheme will work and how long residents could be repaying them for. In other towns and cities, uncertainty about cladding and fire regulations has grown. In Birmingham, Vicky is facing mounting costs and anxiety.
I wake up worrying about it. I go to sleep worrying about it. I worry for the safety of my family. We bought our homes in good faith, and now we're being asked to foot the bill to put them right.
Government data released in December showed the enormity of the task ahead. Although huge sums have already been spent on cladding removal and repairs in England, it's only been completed on around 30% of private sector buildings and just over half of social housing blocks.
All the way along the top as well.
Cladding was removed from Deepa and Gregory's block in South London in 2018. But they're now unable to get the external wall safety form they need to sell their flat.
There are potential
quality issues with our cladding now, with the cladding that was remediated. We wanted to sell up last year and move on because we have 3 children and we're in a 2-bed flat. You can't have the children growing up, in one bedroom together.
You wake up in the morning and it's like, is there going to be a bill for, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds? And the latest announcement really hasn't kind of put that to rest yet.
The Peabody Housing Association says that delays in getting the EWS form don't mean that these flats are unsafe. The government says its latest funding measures will support leaseholders, restore confidence and ensure a situation like this never arises again. For many, though, there's no end to the uncertainty in sight. Tim Muffet, BBC News.
Let's talk to Rebecca Fairclough, who's from the campaign group Manchester Cladiators, which represents the owners of flats in 70 blocks in the Greater Manchester area. Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast this morning. What was your initial reaction to the announcement by the Housing Secretary?
Morning. It's really bittersweet because we're grateful that the government have finally recognised that more money is needed. We've been calling for the size of the Building Safety Fund to be extended since it was announced last year. But at the same time, you've just heard how disappointing it is for other residents, and they feel betrayed because there's a whole section of residents who aren't helped by yesterday's announcement.
And do you want to describe that group?
Yeah, of course. So the cladding is only one issue. There are lots of other building fire safety issues. There are lack of cavity barriers in the walls, timber balconies, timber walkways, problems with steelwork. All of these issues have only been highlighted because these buildings have had to undergo intrusive investigations following Grenfell and to get this EWS 1 form. So all of these issues have been uncovered as a result of that, and yet the government are only funding removal of cladding, and even then, yesterday's announcement won't cover everything. So you've got the issues, that aren't covered. For example, there's one building in Manchester. They're facing a bill of £45,000 per flat just because their building doesn't have cavity barriers. They won't be covered. They won't be helped at all by yesterday.
So how does that square with the statement from the Housing Secretary, Jenrick, who said the government's unprecedented intervention means that the hundreds of thousands of leaseholders who live in higher-rise buildings will now pay nothing towards the cost of removing unsafe cladding? If, there are some with those bills, 45,000 I think you mentioned, those bills, the Housing Secretary says these bills will not be footed by them.
Because the government are focusing on the word cladding and removing unsafe cladding. So, so it's great that they've said that those leaseholders won't have to pay, but there are all the other issues of what's behind the cladding. If there's a problem on the outside of the building, you can bet your bottom dollar there's a problem on the inside of the building. So you have buildings that have cladding problems and the other building safety issues. Then you have other buildings that don't have cladding but have the building safety issues. So, yes, it is an unprecedented amount of money, but this is an unprecedented scandal. This is going to have a rippling effect upon millions of people for many years to come.
There's also been the issue, hasn't there, about how much the building industry itself should take in terms of responsibility and culpability. Did you get any words of reassurance there? There's a future levy, isn't there, that's going to be put on future house builders or builders that build future properties in order to help pay for this at this moment. Is that a good idea in your opinion?
Yeah, so where buildings weren't built in compliance with building regulations at the time, then definitely, there are developers and contractors that are liable. And so, we welcome any levies from the building industry, although we're still not sure what the detail is, and what those levies will go towards. Will they go towards, the remediation of the cladding, or will they go towards, helping to fund the other issues? So it's not sure. The devil's always in the detail with these things, so we just need to wait and see. But we definitely welcome input from the building industry.
And also, this looks at the height of buildings 18 metres or over. So those who live in buildings which are 18 metres or less are also looking at different costs.
Yes, so the government have announced a loan system for buildings between 11 11 and 18 metres high. And it's why should they have a loan, but yet somebody who lives in a building which is 1 metre taller gets a grant for replacing their cladding? And whilst the government has said that it will be capped at £50 a month, what will the overall loan be capped at? Or is it going to be capped at all? So if you've got a £35,000 bill that you need to pay to fix your building, which is only 16 metres tall, and you have to have a loan for that, if that's attached to your property, it instantly devalues your property by that amount. And that's going to be felt harder in the north, where property values are lower than, say, in London. So,
Lots of issues.
Yeah,
Sorry to
lots of
interrupt.
issues.
Very interesting to talk to you, Rebecca Fairclough, who's a campaigner for so-called Manchester Cladiators, which looks after a group of properties in Manchester. Thank you for going through that.
Thank you, Naga.